Hey everyone, so One Piece chapter 1022 just came out, and this was another great chapter. I have a feeling that probably most everyone really loved this chapter because I think most One Piece fans, probably like 60 to 70%, at the very least really like Zoro or really like Sanji. So this was a great chapter for both of them, probably one of the highlight chapters of Onigashima for both of them. So I have a feeling that most people are going to be very, very, very happy about this chapter, rightfully so. So, a lot of what we just saw this chapter did reaffirm several things that I have been saying about Sanji for a long time. I will get to that more in depth once we get to talking about that Zoro and Sanji moment. Before that, let me quickly address the Marineford analysis, since people have been asking. The Marineford analysis is now in the works, it's in the pipeline, I'm working on it, it should be out in September, okay? So look forward to that. It will be really, really long, it will be very in-depth. I'm not going to say anything more about it, but that should be out in September, barring some unforeseen circumstance. So, aside from that, from the start of the chapter, okay, Oda gives us a bit of a recap, as he has been doing at certain intervals, of what the general flow of the fight is, what the current state is, etc., how things have shifted, what are the numbers, etc. So, I think that at the very least, I need to go back, once Act 3 is all said and done, I need to personally go back and just read the entire Onigashima battle from start to finish, because generally, I think what has been a little hazier in my mind, reading chapter to chapter, and I'm sure that it's the case for many of us, is the flow of the battle, right? So how things are swinging back and forth, how big of a deal gaining one advantage is in a certain moment, how pressed the alliance is in a moment, how pressed the beast pirates are in a moment, etc., right? So, for example, the Kibidango moment that was portrayed as a pivotal moment, but I don't remember exactly what the state of things were right before the Kibidango, because I remember it feeling a little bit abrupt, when it was revealed that in that same chapter, hey, the Alliance actually, they're all in a really bad state right now, they all have their backs against the wall, but the Kibidango is about to fix it. So I don't remember exactly what the flow of the battle was prior to that, leading up to that moment. So I think, just in general, I think I'm going to be able to appreciate sort of the flow, ebbs and flows of this whole battle better in retrospect once I'm reading it all in one go. Because right now, usually the highlights of the chapter are focusing more so on individual characters and how things are going for individual characters. So that aside, the very first scene that we got between characters, I mean, aside from, I suppose you could say, reestablishing that Onigashima is 15 minutes away from the mainland of Wano, so we are most likely going to be seeing Momonosuke getting Luffy back to Onigashima in that span of time, right? So, anyway, first scene that we see is Rhizo versus Fikorokuji, right? And both of these guys are not your traditional ninja. So Fikorokuji, it seems, fights primarily with his earlobes, which is classic One Piece. I'm interested to see how Oda does a ninja fight. I guess any Naruto fans should be interested in this as well, because this is, I guess, going to be Oda's take on, on a classic Naruto ninja duel. Let's see what sort of jutsu he can pull out. Rhizo's little speech didn't hit that hard with me, partly because this was something that I mentioned, while Oden's flashback was going on. I think in retrospect, I really enjoyed Oden's flashback for Oden's part of the story, and Oden being a main character. I feel like it was one of the rare One Piece flashbacks where we did not, because Rhizo talks about the strength of the emotional bond between the Scabbards and Oden, and I definitely think going back and reading that flashback, that was the one part of it that was really, really not fleshed out whatsoever. So we got really this emotional bond that Rhizo was talking about between him and Oden. That was just a single panel, right? That was a single panel where Oda narrates, oh, Oden took in Rhizo. You know what I'm saying? Compared to a lot of previous backstories where, we feel the bond between Chopper and Hero. We feel the bond between Robin and Saul. These things are really important because those things carry a lot of weight in the current storyline, because those things get to be fleshed out during backstories. So that was the one part, I guess, of Rhizo's speech that I was kind of rolled my eyes. I was like, I don't really feel much of an emotional bond between you and Oden, aside from you guys, talking about how much you missed Oden all the time. So that aside, I hope at least the fight is good. And now the really good part of the chapter, which is, of course, the main stage. So, King and Queen, first of all, the spread of King and Queen is definitely one of my favorite spreads that we've gotten in the Onigashima, over the span of Onigashima so far, period. Because I did not realize, Queen's form, last we saw it, was, I don't know, it didn't look that impressive to me when we saw his hybrid form against Sanji. But I will say that here, in this spread with King, where both of them are made to look out basically like a nightmare duo, I think Queen looks amazing, and I think King, of course, looks amazing. King is exuding more of his fire-based abilities at this point, so I guess a bit of a, I won't say a sign that maybe he was holding back or something like that. I wouldn't say that, but I will say that I do think that King probably has more to show just because of the fact that he is an unknown race that has some level of fire producing capability. So I wonder how far that can go, right? So I wonder to what extent can King manipulate fire. I doubt it's close to something like, Ace, who has a fire devil fruit, but I wonder how far King could take this in conjunction with all of his other abilities, being a flying type zone, having a sword, etc., etc. I'm really interested to see if we will be seeing, I guess a flame swordsman, like a fire wielding swordsman over the course of this battle, because it does look like King is about to fight Zoro. So they are naturally punishing the gifters who change sides. Makes sense. It's a war. You would probably punish those who basically betrayed you. You probably wouldn't be that concerned with, magic Kibi dangos are the reason I changed sides. Like, I don't think that would fly necessarily for the Beast Pirates. So, makes sense. Marco and Sanji. I like how this opens with basically, we got to see Marco have his go against King and Queen, and Marco, I think this was obviously an amazing showing for him all around. If Marineford did not make you impressed with Marco, this entire Onigashima battle should, because he held his own against King and Queen while having to do work in other areas. Like, Marco had to use his flames for the Ice Oni situation. He was doing a lot besides just fighting King and Queen. So he's been all over the place. Started by taking on knocking the Big Mom pirates back down, then taking on Big Mom herself briefly. Marco has done so much over the course of this battle that, I think Marco fans finally got, probably what they're looking for out of this character, at least in terms, I think he has gone above and beyond what a lot of us might have expected him to do in Onigashima. So, Marco, I think nothing more can be said for him. I think one of the big points as well is that he got to go out on his own terms, right? So towards the end, we see King throw out another attack and Marco block it yet again. And it's not like I expected that Marco would slowly get tired till eventually King and Queen overpower him. And sure, that would have happened eventually. But I like the fact that, we get to see Marco go out in a good moment. He stops an attack and then checks out himself, right? He's like, okay, that's it. I'm gonna take a seat on the bench. I've done enough. I'm done for the day. Maybe not for the day, but I'm done for the moment, right? So I'm gonna take a breather. So I like the fact that all the way to the end, even as Marco is getting tired, Oda still gives him sort of the respect as a character that he's not going to show Marco just because Oda has used Marco in the past in several ways to hype up other characters, right? Like Gar, like Blackbeard, first of all, but just in general, right? Like, just hearing about over the course of Marineford, we see Marco, he's keeping up with the admirals, but he's not quite there. Then during the Payback War, we hear that he was defeated by Blackbeard. I think it was really, really good to see the showings that he got here. Now, if you wanted to see King and Queen do more, I think that's still fine. That's still going to happen just because I don't think that King and Queen themselves have gone all out yet. I think especially King, considering King has these pyromancer abilities that we have yet to see more of. And I have some ideas on the race, or maybe a little bit of what happened to the race that King is, right? So I got some ideas from this chapter based on what Marco said about where they live. So I think I'm going to save that for another video a little bit down the way, but I think I've got an interesting idea. So I'm interested to share that with you guys, talk about it. Yeah, I think I'm going to save that for a theory video. Actually, you know what? Maybe I'm just going to share it here because I don't think it's long enough to share in a theory video. So I'm going to share it here, all right? Here's my theory on what happened to the King's race, okay? King comes from a race on the red line, right? Comes from a race on the red line, But this race is supposedly extinct, or close to extinct. Very, very rare, very hard to find in the world. Big Mom doesn't have any of those, king species type people in her collection of crewmates that she wants, right? So, why is that? Because who else lives on the Red Line? The Celestial Dragons. Do you think the Celestial Dragons would be okay with some other race just sitting up there on the top of the world with them? Obviously not, okay? So, my opinion, there was a bit of an extermination that happened. Whatever race was staying on I have to read Marco's line again. I don't know if he says your race lives on the Red Line or lived on the Red Line, because that does make a big difference. But either way, I think one of the reasons that they would be so rare would be if there was a mass extermination that the Celestial Dragons did when they decided to set up shop on the Red Line. As we know, the Celestial Dragons didn't always live on the Red Line, right? The Celestial Dragons are simply the descendants of the 20 nations that initially defeated the Ancient Kingdom. So whenever they set up shop on the Red Line, that is when it makes sense to me that there would have been some level of extermination of the race that King is a part of, okay? So that makes a lot of sense to me. Besides that, I would assume that, I don't know, if I had to throw out an idea of what King's race would be, I would say Tengu, because from what I know of Japanese mythology, Tengu are, flaming swordsmen with wings. I think I'm not the best in Japanese lore, okay, so don't hold me to that, but that at least seems about right to me, okay? But then again, Oda doesn't necessarily, he's not going to be pulling from Japanese lore for all of his races. He likes creating unique races, so long leg, long arm tribes, the minks. So for all we know, King is just going to be a made-up race that Oda just created for the story of One Piece. But if I had to guess a race based on Japanese lore, I would say, okay, maybe King is a Tengu. So all of that aside, theory snippet of this video over with, okay? But keep that in mind, that's a theory that I'm sticking to. So, where was I? Yeah, Sanji. Sanji, it sounds like, did a good job as well. Off-screen, fighting against King and Queen. At least that seems what it was implied. And I really, really like how, with Zoro's return, here's what I really, really like about Zoro's return in this chapter. So, one, I think in general, strong Enies Lobby vibes going on here across the board, right? Which is that Enies Lobby was the last time that we got a really, really, I'd say, thorough battle where all of the Straw Hats get a fight. Everyone gets a fight against a significant opponent from top to bottom. Not literally everyone. I mean, I can understand that, maybe Chopper doesn't get a fight here. I still hope Usopp gets a fight, etc. But similar to Enies Lobby, it seems like this is the first time in a long time where everybody, for the most part, Usopp didn't get a battle in Enies Lobby either. Neither did Robin. Anyway, side note. Everyone for the most part, you get what I'm saying. Everyone for the most part gets a major battle, right? So in Enies Lobby last we saw a similar situation with Sanji with the Khalifa incident, right? And here we're getting that again with the Black Maria incident. Very, very closely parallel incidents. They're basically exactly the same. Differences in this situation, Sanji's willing to ask for help. Character growth, yay. So besides that, the flip side of Zoro's entrance into this battle and Sanji's entrance into the Enies Lobby battle, where their big return, they both had big return moments. The cool little switch, I guess, is basically, back then, it was just Zoro having to fight against Kaku and Jaibura. Obviously, Usopp tried to help, but he was not capable of helping in that situation. He wasn't strong enough to take on Jaibura, and Zoro was clearly not able to stop Kaku and Jaibura at the same time, which is why Sanji had to come in and kind of save the day. So same situation here. Sanji, with Marco tapping out, it's Sanji's responsibility to take on King and Queen by himself, but he's not going to have to do that alone because we get Zoro coming back in his big return moment. So, really, really like that. Nice little parallel there. I think, yeah, just period, nice little parallel there. And I just really like seeing Zoro and Sanji back in this dynamic again. We got some of that in Wano Act 2, right? We got that in Wano Act 2 with them both coming together at the end of the Flower Capital section of the story after Yasuo's death, right? But that was very brief. This is a significant moment. Marco's talking about them being the stars coming out, to take the main stage and basically take on the two strongest members of the Beast Pirates. So really, really, really cool to see. And the thing that I'm going to talk about this more in depth in a video coming around on Tuesday, because I really, really, really want to take all of the discussion that has been around the Zoro-Sanji dynamic and break that down in that video. The two things I'm going to say here are that this reaffirms a lot of what I've been saying about Sanji and Zoro and Sanji for a long period of time, which is that just because Oda is willing, like he's fine letting Sanji's portrayal and his feats or whatever slide for long periods of time, Oda will always, and has consistently throughout the series, when it comes time for the big fights, when all the Straw Hats are getting their 1v1s, etc., Oda always makes sure to reestablish Sanji's place in the crew as being one of the monster trio, right up there with Luffy and Zoro, as the top 3 fighters of the crew, a step above everybody else, right? Oda always does that. And 2, so much talk that we had to listen to about how Oda is not interested in pursuing the Zoro and Sanji dynamic anymore, how that is an old dynamic, a pre-time skip dynamic, and Oda is moving that aside and kind of dropping that from the series, and that from here on, Oda is more focused on pushing Luffy and Zoro ahead in terms of their significance as fighters. He wants to portray Sanji more as a cook, stuff like that. And people saying, well, that just makes sense for where we're at in the series. Obviously, Sanji's not going to keep up, and he's not going to keep up a rivalry with Zoro going all the way to the end because Zoro's aspirations are so high, yada, yada, yada. That is such a shallow way of looking at it, and such a narrow way of looking at how Oda actually writes these dynamics over the course of the series. Again, look out for that video. But all I can say is that Oda shouldn't have to come out in SBSs and be like, Zoro and Sanji are the wings of the Pirate King. He shouldn't have to have Robin write in a quote saying, Zoro and Sanji are the wings of the Pirate King. If you have any reading comprehension whatsoever and have been following the story whatsoever, you should understand that the Zoro-Sanji rivalry and dynamic is never going away, and it's one of Oda's favorite dynamics in the series. It's a staple that he keeps going back to over and over, just as much as Luffy and Zoro, and both those things can be true. Just because we go through, people live so moment to moment, just because we go through a stretch of chapters where Oda is not playing up the Zoro-Sanji dynamic that much, doesn't mean he's going to abandon what he's been writing, the character dynamic he's been writing around for the vast majority of the story. So I'm glad that that is back and undeniably, still present in One Piece. I don't think you can read this chapter and tell yourself that, okay, Oda doesn't care about Zoro and Sanji together anymore, and he's not going to write them as a as a bit of a rivalry or a bit of a duo anymore. He's not going to treat them as Luffy's right and left hand anymore. All of that is still going to happen, and that's going to happen all the way through the end of the story. So, look forward to the video coming out next week, and that's all for this video. I will talk to you all later.